Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another GDO show. Today is November 17th, which is a Saturday. I'm not used to doing the show on a Saturday, but I had stuff going on yesterday that I couldn't, that I didn't, well, not couldn't, but didn't want to push away. It was a little out of my control, so I decided to postpone the show, do it Saturday, but to anyone watching on YouTube, it's any old day, so uh, that's just how that goes. So today we're going to be talking about my favorite anime of all time, One Piece, but we'll get to that eventually. First, we just gotta do some recaps, so let's just play the intro, start the show, and we're good to go. It's the GDO show. Alright, so again, today we're going to be talking about One Piece. It's going to be the first episode in a series that I decided to do One Piece because if anyone else follows the anime, it's very long. It's a very long anime. I think they're almost at 800 episodes now, kind of thing, and the manga is even longer. It's quite long. The manga is currently at 925 chapters, and let's see exactly what is the anime at. We're at of course it's not like right 860 episodes. So it's been going on for a while, and I started watching it in 2006, I think. I think it was 2006. It was either 2006 or 2007. But I gotta look that up too. Um, I got hooked on it because I remember that it started airing in North America on 4Kids TV. And I remember watching it, and I was watching it with a friend, and he was like, "This is terrible." And I was like, "Oh." And I decided to see, anime series was licensed in 2004, so I was 2004, so I would have been in grade 10, I think. I think I was in grade 10. 10 or 11, I don't remember. Either way, it was great. I got hooked immediately to the episodes that I started up. And it was great. I mean, I loved it. It was one of the most captivating things to me at the time because I mean, like, of course, anime this, anime that. I didn't know what anime was. I just kind of watched whatever was on TV. And at the time, there were other 4Kids things. I'd watched Digimon and Pokemon previously. Of course, everyone Dragon Ball Z, Inuyasha, all the popular stuff at the time that was on network television. And then some of the stuff that wasn't as popular that was still on network television. Like around the same time, I remember watching Dot Hack Sign and Gundam Seed Destiny, and both of those were okay too. But I mean, I just really liked the interesting take that One Piece had with its devil fruit powers. Everyone had their own unique ability that they could use, and I thought that was really cool. But not every character has one of those abilities, right? Some people are like gifted in other ways or use other things at their disposal during fights that they're in and stuff. It's a very shonen anime, so it's obviously targeted at the younger male audience. So it's full of action and full of fighting and stuff. So I decided to do a series recapping how I felt about the entire series, all the characters. Obviously, these thoughts have changed over time, but everything I talk about tonight is going to be how I feel today. So it's just one of those. It's just one of those things, like I mean, I might not have felt this way about characters or something like that, 10 years ago when I first, well, when I was still watching it. But I don't know. So, excuse me while you guys hear some Windows sounds going on. Normally I have my computer sounds muted because I have other stuff going in the background, so let me quickly mute those and change my audio levels around. I always have to mess with them when I play my intro and play music because it's really loud on my end. So, as always, I'll start with a little recap of everything that happened this week. Last week I talked about a bunch of I guess it was last week was personal week. I talked about a bunch of questions pertaining to of a personal nature, and so that was great. So if you want to check out that, go back into the archive and look at episode 7. But I mentioned that I'd started applying to do skip the dishes currying, and I got that fully fixed up last week on the weekend, and I started doing it through the week, and I did a shift on it Tuesday, I did one on Wednesday, and I did one on Thursday, and it's actually a lot of fun. Like, it's really, I just love the idea of like delivering stuff to people. Like, people are getting lazier, and some people just, it's an ease. It's an ease. So it's just really easy to just kind of run around and go, here you go, here you go, here you go. So that was something that I really, really enjoyed doing, and also I'll probably keep doing it. It's just a few extra bucks, and it'll help pay for all the little things. Like, maybe I'll put some of it aside towards the stream, but there isn't really a whole lot of stuff I spend money on over here. Could get a new chair eventually, but I mean, a lot of it's just extra stuff for GDQ, I guess. Going to GDQs cost me a lot of money, so, because obviously flying from Canada to the United States is really expensive, and then I live far away, and I don't know, it's just my vacation, so it's just something nice to put money away for, I guess, that isn't just straight up my work. So anyway, it's a good change of pace, and it gets me out of the house and gets me some fresh air, so I'm really liking that. So that's about it for that. This last week I turned on my SNES Classic again as well, and one night while I was just chilling in Discord, chatting with people and watching streams, I turned on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And I gotta say, I really enjoy Street Fighter. It like takes me back to like the olden days when I used to play Street Fighter 2 as a kid, but of course I didn't know anything about the game back then. I just had fun playing it. But yeah, I don't really know anything about the game still, I guess, to be honest. I don't know what the tier list in the game is. It's like, I don't know. I just play as E Honda. E Honda's my dude in Street Fighter. I mean, in the newer Street Fighters, like starting with Street Fighter 4, I really liked Akuma because I just like the way he's designed. And I like all his abilities as well as his supers look really cool as well. So that's kind of the direction I went with that. But yeah, E Honda was always the best because I don't know, just his hands, the fast-moving hands, is it's just, I don't know, it's just satisfying, satisfying to do. Just mash the buttons until the hands come out. So, other than that, nothing else really to report this week. I did a whole lot of cooking yesterday, and then I went out to eat at a friend's. That's the thing I moved the podcast for. So, oh, excuse me. I had to wake up early this morning for work. Normally I don't work Saturdays anymore, but I had to. today, so I'm obviously tired. But yeah, I cooked a whole bunch of chicken thighs and readied some chicken breasts for cooking tomorrow. I think I'm gonna do it. So, or maybe not tomorrow because tomorrow is Sunday, which means it's the weekly Symmetry Squad Ocarina of Time randomizer race. And usually I don't have a whole lot of time to make food before the races start because we usually start the races around 4:30 or 5 PST. And so usually on my way home I grab sushi. And then by the time I get home it's like 3:30, and then by the time I eat it it's around 4-ish. And then I have a little bit of time to rest and relax, and then we're ready to race. So that's the way that goes. But it's fun. Check it out if you're a follower on Twitch, or if you like Ocarina of Time. It's just a really interesting way to actually do the game, having everything all randomized and stuff like that. So at the beginning of the podcast this week, I just wanted to give a couple shout outs to people I know that have been streaming in real life. I'm sure there's more, but I just wanted to mention these three in particular. First one is twitch.tv/luxuriouslady. It's spelled exactly the way it's said. LuxuriouSlady. She mostly streams Ocarina of Time randomizer stuff, but she and her roommate stream some question and answer talk show every Thursday afternoon, and it's really entertaining, so give her a follow if you could. Next is a good friend and a coworker of mine, Poji Stubborn, PoejiStubborn. He's actually going to be streaming after this podcast, I think. So, or later tonight anyway. Mostly it's just random stuff, I think. He streamed some of the new Spider-Man that came out, and he's got Red Dead Redemption 2, so he's just starting out, so it's just starting out. And then the other one is Hybrid Theory 007, HYBRIDTHEORY 007. He streams exclusively World of Warships, but it's a really chill stream, and he's got a good background voice that you can just kind of throw up and listen to. So just three streamers that I watch occasionally, some more than others, but all three of them I watch pretty regularly whenever they stream, kind of chill out there. So give them a follow if you like their content, and if not, then at least you tried. So this is a silly thing to throw in, but while I was making my splits, I throw it in. I thought I'd give you guys an update on my snack foods, because I remember a lot of people knew that I bought a lot of Cheez-Its after SGDQ. I brought 11 boxes of Cheez-Its back from the States at the end of June, so I've had them since the very beginning of July. I flew back on July 1st, or June 31st, I mean, the night of June 30th, I mean. So I still have 4 boxes of Cheez-Its left. I have 1 bacon cheddar, 2 cheddar jack, and 1 grooved zesty ranch ones. And then on top of that, I still have a moderately large handful of banana runts left. So yeah, I'm probably never going to be buying that, I'll probably be never buying that amount of runts again. It was definitely too many runts. So, I don't know. Once they're gone, they'll be gone. They'll be out of my life. I wish I would have spent more money on those gummy bears, because those green apple gummy bears that I bought were so good. I just went through them so fast. I forgot how much I like gummy bears. So, yeah, that's just something funny. Looking forward to GDQ. I know I might be bringing back something again, but we'll see. The hotel this year for AGDQ is right next to a 24-hour 7-Eleven, so I'm sure I can buy a lot of Funyuns there because I love Funyuns because I don't think they're up anywhere in Canada, so they're just great. They're great snack foods, and I don't know. That's just what I think of Funyuns. So, but I mean, there's also going to be a Popeyes, a McDonald's, all this unhealthy stuff that I shouldn't be eating or but can't eat at home. So it's like I just want to stuff my face with it the whole week. So GDQ is only 2 months away. It's actually a month and a half away. It's currently November 17th, so it's 7 weeks. It's exactly 7 weeks away today at midnight. So, in 7 weeks at this time, I will be on a flight. I will be on a plane flying out east to Dulles International Airport in Virginia. And I guess it's in Washington. Well, it's called the Washington Dulles Airport, but I don't actually know if it's in like Washington D.C. or like I know it's just outside of it, but I don't know if it's actually in Virginia. So, yeah, I don't know. I really hate plane rides, but if you guys watched episode 2 of the GDO show, you'd know that. That episode was all about travel, so um, yeah, plane ride. Necessary evil, but necessary nonetheless. So, I forgot a split there, so we're going back. So, why One Piece? Well, I pretty much gave the explanation before, during the intro. One Piece is my favorite anime of all time. I would say it will always be, but there's definitely ones that are coming close to it. If anyone watching these or knows me, you might know that I also follow Hajime no Ippo really closely as well, and that is a phenomenal manga. Right now, it's at a really crazy spot. So I really don't know what's going to be going forward with it. But I mean, I said that like 6 months ago when I was reading it, just like, well, I have no idea what's going to be going on with the story now, but I don't know. The guy who writes it, Morikawa, he's really written quite the story in the last year. So it's definitely up there. It's not as actiony, I guess, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in it. So it's really funny seeing exactly what direction the series is gonna go. Um, Yeah, it's hard to talk about what's going on without talking about all these little things that have happened throughout the series because the series definitely doubles back on itself a lot with introducing a topic of discussion and then coming back to it like 200 chapters later. There's lots of story arcs that haven't completely finished either. A lot of characters who haven't been completely fleshed out, and some weird plot lines that have just been completely dropped. Um, so yeah, it's definitely worth a read. But back to One Piece, what we're talking about this week. So One Piece is my favorite, obviously. I've said that a billion times now. One Piece is very long, and so with the two put together, I feel like my opinion on One Piece has changed a lot over the years because there's a lot of stories in One Piece, especially nowadays, that are really disconnected from the storyline. Because, I mean, One Piece has an overall storyline that is always followed. But then, as you jump from island to island in the series, there's little mini storylines that take place on the island because, of course, things have to happen. But the way the manga's been going for the last couple years has been less less going from island to island, following the storyline of the show, to following various plot devices that kind of weave and tangle themselves together. So, because of that, it's become very detached from the story, but at the same time, it's also kind of driving it forward. Hey, Atticus, welcome. So, I won't be getting into any of the stuff that's happening currently in the manga for a very long time because I plan on doing these shows fairly in depth, talking about the different parts of the series. And as One Piece goes on, the story arcs keep getting longer and longer. So like at the beginning, I'm able to throw the first like 4 or 5 arcs into one discussion. Like the beginning of the series where everyone meets each other, when they land at Syrup Village, when they land at the Baratie, when they land at the first town that they're in. The arcs are maybe 7 or 8 episodes long, up to like a max of like 12 or something like that. Compared to the current story arcs where they might reach 50, which is like an entire year's worth. So, obviously things will need to be paired together a little bit. I would probably end up pairing Water 7 and Enies Lobby together into one long discussion, but I don't want to talk for like much more than 2 hours about each one. Obviously, that'll be a little harder for some areas, but it's hard to piece together small islands that have nothing that really happens. For example, in the Baroque Works saga, there's a couple story arcs in there that I could just shove together, no problem. Like Misty Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island all go together really nicely because it's like, I mean, there's not a whole lot that happens in the first two. It's very, very concise, and there's very little. But then there's a lot of stuff to talk about in Drum Island that sets up for later on. But then you have the first big arc that we'll talk about later, which is Alabasta, and Alabasta is like separated into several like mini sections, and then on top of that, there's tons of content in there because it was the first really long story arc. I think for these talks, I will be mainly talking about the anime adaptation instead of just the manga. It's been a very long time since I've read or since I've watched read any of the early manga. I never started reading it until Enies Lobby. And then nowadays, I haven't watched the anime in like several years because I just catch up on reading it. So I'm sure doing these talks will give me an excuse to read up on or watch some of the more current stuff, because as much as I'd like to talk about stuff that happens in the anime and manga together, there's just too much. And I mean, in the anime, there's a lot of filler that happens. There's a lot of filler that happens dispersed within the canon content, and that makes it really difficult to watch sometimes. If anyone can remember watching Thriller Bark, it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Thriller Bark is one of the slowest paced arcs in One Piece, not because of the content, the art. It was great, but I mean, it just felt like it went on forever. Because first off, it is kind of dry. Everything that happens is kind of dry, and then on top of that, there's so much filler in with the content. So one 17-page chapter of manga is one chapter of manga is like one episode. And when you do that, it's like when you do that, it just slows it down so much. Like the beginning of the series had maybe like 1.5, 2, 3, up to like 4 or 5 chapters in one episode kind of thing. But they definitely cut that down. And I mean, it's not consistent throughout the whole series, but it kind of is. So I'm going to go ahead and start this off, and I'm going to start off every talk here by saying spoilers. If you're not caught up to the current anime up to the end of Whole Cake Island, well, I guess I won't say Whole Cake. That's going a little far into the future. I guess for the first bunch of episodes, I'm going to say if you're not caught up to the end of the Marineford War up until the time skip, then there are major spoiler alerts. I'll try and keep the talk for after the time skip to when we start getting into the later story arcs to talk about, like when the supernovas get introduced, because that becomes more apparent then. But everything early like doesn't really matter. So I'll be kind of talking about little points here and there up until the end of the Marineford arc. So that's pretty much why. And yes, Edicus, Brooke is is probably my second favorite Straw Hat. Brooke has been getting the short end of the stick a lot lately with the other crew members. Like some of them, like definitely haven't been they've had their spotlight, but their spotlight's kind of dimmed, and now they're just background characters. Like I mean, I think his power up was really cool, but I just said I wasn't going to talk about that until we get there, so. But yeah, Brooke has definitely become one of the background characters, along with Frankie and Nico Robin. So, starting at the very beginning, I'm pretty much just going to be going through the anime, talking about the story arc in question and the characters who are introduced in them. So it'll kind of be a little bit slow paced, and I mean, a lot of the characters don't have moments that shine until later on in the series, but I feel like I can talk more about it now. And I know you want to talk about the new stuff, Atticus, and so do I. Like you just say the word dogtooth, and it triggers that thing in your brain that's just like, I want to talk about that right now. But it's really hard to not just jump around to all the different things. So, Romance Dawn is the first section of the manga, and that's what a lot of people call the beginning of the series too. So, Romance Dawn is basically the first couple episodes of One Piece, and in the first couple episodes, you meet a handful of characters that'll show up throughout the rest of the series, and then one that doesn't. So, in the first episode of One Piece, the first main character, well, the first character that you're introduced to is Kobe. And Kobe he's this young, shy, pink-haired boy. And throughout the series, he definitely grows and matures, but in the beginning of the series, he is so cringy to look through. Like the beginning of One Piece is definitely the hardest watch I've ever had to go through. Like I've watched up until like the end of Thriller Bark in One Piece like around 5 or 6 times, and that's like around 400 episodes. And the worst watch is probably the first 25 episodes or so. Like the character development that happens through all the characters happens eventually, but a lot of the characters that you originally meet at the beginning of the series are really, really, really terrible. And yeah, I was talking about that etiquette as well. Like when I first started watching One Piece, I originally watched it in English for like the first couple episodes, and I watched it every week for like a while. But then I was watching the Japanese alongside it. So I was first introduced to One Piece in Japanese, but then I started watching the English eventually as well. So Kobe is a victim of circumstance. His dream was always to be a Marine, but he accidentally boarded a pirate ship by mistake and then was forced to be a pirate. So one day a barrel washes ashore, or washes like, into the water, and they pull it ashore, and out pops the main character, Luffy. So Luffy, I guess Luffy goes through like stages of character development, and it depends on how much you know about his character, how you feel about him. At least that's the way it works for me anyway. So at the beginning of the series, Luffy is just like this character who just really doesn't care. Like he's got this like just this big dumb grin on his face all the time, and he just like it's really hard to describe. It's just he's very happy-go-lucky. Like, oh, do you want to do something? Well, just do it. Like that's how it goes. So his dream has been always been to be a pirate, and now he's a pirate, but he has no crew. He's just him. So Luffy and Kobe meet aboard this pirate ship, and Luffy just tells him like, well, if you don't want to be a pirate, why don't you just tell the pirate captain that you don't want to be a pirate? So then we got the introduction to Alvida. Alvida is this fat, ugly pirate who's just like the first villain introduced to the series, and she just like her weapon of choice is a big club. So this is the beginning of the series. This is what you have. It's basically pirates and those who are just kind of civilians in the way, and that's how the beginning of the series works. A cruise ship gets attacked by pirates, they get plundered, and then you meet all these different pirates. So Alvida is one of the first pirates who is actually like a plunderous, villainous pirate. So she just like it's all about getting money. It's all about, who cares about anyone else. Meanwhile, as you say, Atticus, Luffy is just like, I'm gonna be the king of the pirates. Like my goal is to reach the end of the Grand Line and find One Piece, the treasure that was left by Goldie Roger, and I'm gonna rule over the pirates as the king. So that is the premise of the show. Is Luffy wants to become king of the pirates, so he's going to travel through the Grand Line to become that. So that is like, for a very long time, that is the overall premise of the show. And even to this day, it's still the premise. That's his dream. But as time goes on, and I'll talk about this, the premise of the series kind of starts changing a little bit. Um, so obviously Luffy and Alvida meet up on this pirate ship, and because he is really oblivious, he calls Alvida a fat, ugly pirate, and she thinks she's the hottest thing on the sea, so she gets really mad and starts fighting Luffy. And she smacks him on the head with a club, and everyone thinks he's dead, but then it just smiles because nothing happened. So Luffy has eaten a devil fruit, which is basically the Grand Line is covered in these mystical fruits called devil fruits. And each one of them contains the ability of the devil. Like it's an original ability that is granted to only that one person. And the fruit cannot bloom on the Grand Line until that person has deceased. So there will be nobody on the planet with the same ability as you. So Luffy's devil fruit power has turned his body into rubber, so he can stretch, basically. And he hasn't learned to really harness the powers of a devil fruit yet, as well as some people have, obviously. But he's had it ever since he was a young child, and you find that out in a flashback that he has when he meets, when he chills out with Shanks and his crew. So anyway, Luffy blasts off Alvida, and Alvida doesn't really contribute anything to the story at any point in the anime. Like, Alvida is just in the story to progress the plot of the first couple episodes. Like, she does make an appearance later on in Logetown, and I'll be talking about this next week, because next week I'll talk about Arlong Park and Logetown and the journey to the Grand Line. But for now, Alvida is just... she's just like a stepping stone in the plot. Like, I mean, she still doesn't have any purpose when she comes back. That's true. Like, she shows up again with a devil fruit, but I mean, that's about it. Like, she doesn't actually do anything when she comes back. So Alvida is probably one of those throwaway characters that's just like contributes absolutely nothing to the story. So I'm sure she might in the future with the way she's going, because she joins she joins Buggy's pirate crew, and Buggy is the first real villain of the series. So but if you read the manga, the covers are pictures, and eventually, like, occasionally the artist Oda, he makes stories out of the pictures, and after the events of what happens to Buggy, eventually through the cover story you find out how they meet and stuff, and that was eventually animated into a filler arc, but there was never actually any story arc in the manga about it. It was just covers. So that's, I mean, it's funny filler because, I mean, Buggy's a really funny character, but I mean, like, Alvida is just a waste of space in the manga. So, and the anime. She's completely worthless, in my opinion. So Luffy and Kobe escape from Alvida's pirate ship in a boat, and they come across this woman who's escaping from Alvida's ship in another boat, and she turns out to be Nami. So, but you don't meet her until the next, the arc after the next. Eventually, they all meet together, but not yet. Up until now, she's just like this thief that steals from pirates. And she's actually the first character that you see in the anime. Um, the very first shot of the anime is Nami aboard this cruise ship, uh, sneaking into the safe to get money. So I guess I'll talk about Kobe a little bit before I start moving on. So, um, like I said, Kobe is just a weenie, and later on he does develop into a really baller character. But even then, like, he's still always next to people who outshine him. So Kobe never really has any solid place in the story except for the Marineford arc where he does some crazy stuff. And then also the first time Luffy meets Kobe uh, after Enies Lobby. Those are probably the only two moments I can think of that Kobe was useful in any way to anyone. So now we talk about Luffy. So again, I feel like talking about the characters as they are throughout the series is really difficult to do all at once. So, like I said, Luffy kind of goes through character development in stages. So, first off, when you meet Luffy, you think this grinning idiot is the main character. I can't believe it. He's loud, he's obnoxious, and he just doesn't care. He lives life the way he wants to live. That's basically how it is. And he just wants to have a successfully strong pirate crew of about 10 people. That's what he said at the beginning of the series. Whereas, like, every pirate crew in the series has tons and tons of people on it, just tons of people to just throw into the sea. And I mean, eventually there is a pirate army that becomes a thing, but it's main character syndrome. So like if there's 50 Straw Hat pirates, all of a sudden it's like there's no way to like have there's no way to have that many main characters with enough screen time. So I mean, it's a good writing point to be like, I want a small crew. So that's really all I can say about Luffy at that point. You don't know anything about him except that his body is made of rubber and he can't be shot. Like, if you shoot him with a bullet, it'll just bounce back. So that's pretty much all you know about him until Luffy's first flashback, which happens right after he meets Zoro. So Luffy, when he leaves the ship, he learns from Kobe about a pirate hunter named Zoro, Roronoa Zoro, who's locked up on a nearby island. And he's a notorious pirate bounty hunter that has a really evil streak to him. So you find out on the island that the reason Zoro is imprisoned is because he disrespected the Marine captain's son on the island and got locked up for it. And now he's being taunted by the idiot son, as he's called. And basically he's just like... he's a good guy at heart who's just trying to live. Like, he started hunting pirates because he had no money to live. And at the beginning of the series, Zoro is a very open character. Like, the way he's drawn in both the anime and the manga is very open. Like his hair is very short in the beginning, and I mean it stays pretty short throughout, but just the way he's drawn, like, he's very rigid. You can always see his eyes. Like, he's never he never looks very like he never looks as jaded by experience as he does throughout, and he's just happy to like I don't know. You can just tell it's really hard to describe. Like I can't think of exactly the words I'm trying to think for this, but he's basically just like I'm just here because I'm here. So Luffy finds out his story, why he's locked up, and he learns that Helmeppo, Captain Morgan's son, has no intention to let him live, so he's like, well, we're going to fix that. So, Captain Morgan is the first I don't want to say villain, because he's not really a villain. He kind of is, but he's kind of not. He's the first antagonist that is part of the Marines. So, in One Piece, there's a lot of different conflict that happens. There's pirates versus pirates, and then there's pirates versus neutral, and then there's Marines versus pirates. Sand hamburgers. It wasn't sand hamburgers in the first arc when Helmeppo stomps the rice balls into the dirt. They're in the 4 Kids version. They're actually edited to be cookies. Like they don't just call them cookies. Like in Pokemon, like they're rice balls, but you know they call them jelly donuts. But in the 4 Kids version, they actually like reanimated the scene to show it be cookies instead of a rice ball. So I mean, it's really funny. I wasn't going to talk a lot about the silly edits that they did in the arcs because I could go on for ages and ages about the music and the visuals and all those like stupid jokes that they threw in. But um, basically, basically, Luffy goes to save Zoro from Helmeppo, who's trying to get him. And what I was saying is Marines versus pirates, pirates versus pirates, and then pirates versus civilians, I guess. And there's not a whole lot of pirates versus civilians that happens in the early arcs, but it eventually becomes more and more of a thing. So the Marines are made up of like this big hierarchy of roles. And in the beginning, the highest thing you hear is a Marine captain. So there's like all sorts of like each Marine headquarters has one captain assigned to it. And then under that are there vice captains, and then there's like the lieutenants of the Marines, and then all the little grunts as well. So Captain Morgan is a corrupt Marine captain who's using his status to just abuse the people of his island. And nobody likes him. Nobody in the Marines likes him. No, none of the civilians like him. He's just like this power-hungry guy. And he's also the first interesting character in the series because his right hand is just like completely an axe, or his left hand. I'm pretty sure it's his right hand. His right hand is an axe. Like it's just built into his arm. Like he doesn't have a hand, it's just an axe. So I mean, Luffy breaks into the jail and, talks to Zoro like, hey, I'll rescue you, but only if you join my pirate crew. And Zoro hates pirates because he's known to be a pirate hunter. And so he's just like, well, I guess I don't really have any choice but to say yes, because otherwise I'm going to die. So yes, I'll join your pirate crew, but save me, and then we'll talk. So Luffy breaks into the Marine headquarters to get Zoro's swords back. And he's like, my swords are in there. And so he brings out 3 swords because he's like, I have no idea which sword was yours. And he's like, well, actually, all 3 of them are mine. So there's a scuffle. Zoro and Luffy mess up all the Marines that are there. Helmeppo threatens Kobe's life with a gun to the head, and Luffy's just like, Kobe doesn't care about dying, and Kobe's just like, yeah, I don't really care, Luffy, take him out. So Luffy punches Helmeppo, and then right as Morgan's about to, shove his axe through Luffy, Zoro steps in and saves him, and because he just trusted him that he would. So Marines are defeated, and then all the Marines on the island, normally they would go to arrest Luffy, but they just tell them to leave the island because they have to, because they're Marines. And then as they're leaving, they salute, and then they punish themselves for saluting pirates because they're Marines and they're not supposed to do it. What Four Kids puts to Helmeppo's head isn't like in the original Japanese version. Helmeppo is clearly holding a gun, like an old style gun, to Kobe's head. But in the Four Kids version, the gun is like attached to like a spring that's set to like swing a hammer. So it's like a hammer gun. And it's just really, really silly looking. I didn't have any picture prepared of it, but all the Marines use like water guns, like big water guns. Like there in the Four Kids edited version, there are no Japanese texts. There's no references to Japanese food anywhere. There's no weapons. All the smoking has been edited out. Which, I mean, when Sanji's cigarette that he always has is replaced with a lollipop, like, I mean, it's a clever edit, but you could also just change it into a toothpick. Like, it kind of ruins Sanji's character having a lollipop in some scenes, but it's like, it's just, yeah. So anyway, Zoro gets saved by Luffy, and then they head off on their merry way to go off. And so then Zoro finds like, oh great, who else is on our crew? And he was like, well, you're the only one. And he's like, what have I got myself into? So Luffy and Zoro leave the island, and that's that. So Helmeppo, who was Morgan's son, is now just like, I mean, Captain Morgan gets arrested and gets taken to some prison. I don't know. Anyway, Helmeppo and Kobe join the Marines. Well, I guess Helmeppo is technically a part of the Marines, but Kobe and Helmeppo like joined the lower ranks of the Marines, and so Kobe finally got his dream of being a pirate. But before Luffy leaves the island, he wants the Marines to know that he has no affiliation to Kobe because they came to the island together. So Luffy starts telling the Marines about how Kobe was a pirate on the pirate ship, and he knows that if they knew about his past on Alvida's ship, he wouldn't ever become a Marine because he was a pirate. So Kobe punches Luffy because he wants him to shut up, but then Luffy's like, how could you punch me? And he starts punching the crap out of Kobe, like violently punching Kobe, like again and again. And the Marines like are like, hey, pirate scum, like leave, like we know you saved us, but don't hurt this little boy like that. So they kick him away. Kobe joins the Marines, and he's just like, wow, Luffy did that for me. Like, just to be absolutely clear that there was no affiliation, he made him hit him so that he could make it seem like they weren't friends. So anyway, they leave. Kobe joins. Helmeppo joins, and later on, there's an interesting side story. So thoughts on Helmeppo? Helmeppo is a big loudmouth. He is exactly like the epitome of a rich kid who like is bragging about how rich he is. Like Captain Morgan, like like he even like went as far as to say as like Helmeppo is just worthless because he's just using Morgan's name to like get what he wants. Like he's a useless, weak person, and so like Morgan had no respect for Helmeppo ever, and just didn't care about him at all. But I mean, he was like really all about himself. So I mean, who cares about Morgan anyway? Morgan is never featured in the rest of the anime, except in a filler arc that was technically a cover story. The beginning of One Piece features a lot of cover stories that were animated into filler arcs, but that stops. So, unfortunately. So, Morgan is just like this really egotistical Marine captain, but he gets his just desserts in the beginning. So, the next thing that happens before they arrive in their next town is you get to see one of Luffy's flashbacks, and eventually all the characters get a flashback about their past. And I mean, technically it was filler, but it was also filler based on canon, so it was just done in a way that was great, and it was a good introduction to Garp as well, who you never would have seen otherwise. So when Luffy was a young child, he was friends with a strong pirate crew called the Red Hair Pirates, led by their captain, Red Hair Shanks, who used to wear a straw hat. And when they left the village, he gave his straw hat to Luffy because it was like, hey, borrow this for a little bit, become a strong pirate, and then one day when you're a pirate, then you'll give it back to me. So when Luffy was young, he was partying with Shanks's crew in a bar, and he ate, because he was just a glutton, he ate the devil fruit that they stole from a pirate ship. And that's how he got his rubber abilities. So he badmouths a bandit in his town, and eventually the bandit just throws him out to sea. Because one interesting thing about the devil fruits is that if you consume a devil fruit and gain the power of the devil, you relinquish your ability to be able to swim. So if you're placed in water, you will just be completely immobilized. Like all the energy gets sucked out of you and you can't do anything. So Luffy gets tossed into the ocean after consuming the devil fruit, and he's saved by Shanks, who gets his arm bitten off in the process. And this is the first time in the series you see Haki, which is it's like an emotionally spiritual ability that kind of has different things about it. But I think at this point in the series, it's hard to tell whether or not Haki was a planned thing, or if it was just something that was in the moment. But it's just how it is at the beginning of the series. This is like the 4th episode. So Luffy snaps too and gets abducted by a bird and gets carried into a town where he meets Nami. And Nami eventually becomes the 3rd crew to join the pirates. But at first, when she meets Luffy, Luffy saves her from some of Buggy's pirates. But she doesn't want anything to do with pirates. Nami absolutely hates pirates, and there's very good reason for that I'll be talking about next week. But for now, Nami's character is, she's this sweet, innocent young girl who gets real close to pirates and then steals everything that they have. Like, She's just a dirty thief. Like she's a cat burglar, basically. So when you originally saw her in the beginning of the series, that's exactly what she was doing, and she stole a ton of money from Alvida as well, and the money she needed to help out her village, but you find that out a little bit later. So Nami's character in the beginning is really, it's not really naive. Like she's she's a really smart person. Like Nami spends all of her time like outwitting pirates basically. She hates pirates, but at the same time like she kind of has to work with pirates to get their things. So she just pretends to be their friend, steals all their stuff, um, and then gets out of there with her reward. So the reason she's looking for Buggy is because she wants to steal a map of the Grand Line, or a map to the Grand Line. So at first it's like, why would she want to do that? But eventually you kind of learn that. So she wants to steal a map to the Grand Line, but eventually um, she gets caught and kind of backstabs Luffy a little bit. So it's the first time you kind of see like a double ruse, because the first time you see Buggy, it's really funny. So I guess I'll back up and I'll kind of cover what I was talking about a little more before I start talking about this next arc. So at the beginning of the series, the three main characters that you'll see are, there's Luffy, who is kind of like, he's just happy-go-lucky. There's not a whole lot about him, and I really, really dislike beginning of the series Luffy. Like, beginning of the series Luffy he just has no chill. Like there's just nothing that can go on. Zoro's character at the beginning of the series is kind of the same, like a little more energetic than he's used to. Like in the later part of the series, Zoro is mostly just sleeping, like he's never awake. And then on top of that, like he's just really really badass. Like Zoro is like probably one of the most evil looking of the Straw Hats if you had to pick one, but I mean like he's definitely not. And then there's Kobe, who is just a big whiny nut at the beginning, and there's just nothing to say about that. So the next arc introduces a couple characters that become comic relief throughout the series. First you meet Buggy, who's the leader of the pirate crew. Now, Buggy the clown, and he is a clown, he dresses like a clown, and his entire pirate crew is based around the circus. So Buggy has a big red nose, which is natural, which is really weird. Like his nose is, I'm pretty sure his nose is a natural red nose, because even when he was a kid, like before he was a before he was a clown, like he still had the red nose. So there's a bunch of things around Buggy that eventually stretches on to the rest of the series. At the beginning of the series, Buggy is definitely the strongest villain like in the series for a very long time. Buggy was on the pirate crew of Goldie Roger, who was the pirate king. So Buggy was on his crew, and Shanks was also a part of that crew as well. So Buggy has like connections to like a lot of the most powerful pirates in the world. And Later on, you'll find other pirates that get met throughout the world were also a part of the crew. Um, uh, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Uh, the dude the dude at Reverse Mountain. Um, do I have to Google this? I can't remember his name. Uh, uh, Crocus. Crocus was the name. Crocus was met very early on in the series, and you never really find out until later in the series that he was the doctor on the Pirate King's crew. And then later on, about not really halfway through the series, I would say a little less than halfway. A little less than halfway up to where they are now, you meet the first mate on the Pirate King's crew, the second hand to the King of the Pirates, Silver's Rayleigh. So Buggy is definitely like in it. Like he's a really comic relief character because even though he's a really strong villain, um, he first off he's a clown, so everything is just always really funny. Like, he's really sensitive about people talking about his nose. So if anyone will say like, "Oh, he knows what's up" or something like that, he'll just be like, "What did you say about my nose?" And it's like he gets really obscenely angry really fast. Like he's, but it's in a funny way. He never gets like eerily angry. Like before Luffy fights him for the first time, you you think he's like this dark shady character who's like this manipulative whatever. And I mean you see like shady shots of him throughout the arc. But then when you initially meet him when he judge puts Nami through the trial, then I mean he's like kind of evil. But then throughout the arc, when you fight the other people, or when Luffy fights the other people in his crew, and then eventually meets up with Buggy again, he's like he turns into like this jokester at the end because the Luffy and Nami kind of fight Buggy together at the end, and it's really funny how the way the fight goes. So Buggy himself has a Devil Fruit ability, which was granted to him not by choice. Um, when he was on the Pirate King's crew, he his goal was to collect all of the treasure in the world, he um, so that he could become rich, and that was just always his goal. But one day they plunder a ship and they get a devil fruit. And Buggy finds out that you can sell a devil fruit on the black market for 10 million berries, which is the currency of One Piece. And so he's like, "Oh, that's a lot." So he replaces it with a fake one and pretends to eat the fake one just to say like, I'm going to eat this devil fruit and we'll see what happens. So he eats he pretends to eat the fake one. Well, he eats the fake one, I guess, and nothing happens. So he's like, well, everyone's like, oh, I guess it was a fake. So meanwhile, not Luffy, Buggy has the real fruit stowed away, and he's in a ship about to escape to go sell it when Shanks pops up and Buggy panics and puts it in his mouth. and so and so Shanks is just like talking to Buggy and he's like, "Hey, what's going on over here? Like, what are you doing over here? Why don't you come join the party?" And Buggy's like, go away." So Shanks leaves and Buggy thinks he's got away with it, but then Shanks comes back and startles him and he swallows the real fruit by accident. So Buggy has this insane grudge against Shanks that he'll take to the end of the earth. That he hates him because now he can't collect all the treasure in the world because he can't swim anymore. And so the devil fruit power that Buggy has been granted is the ability to split his body up into multiple pieces. So basically, Buggy can't be slashed with a sword. If he's cut with a sword or anything like that, he'll just become two pieces, and then he can put those pieces together. And Zoro finds out about that when he tries to slice him. So he slices him in half, but then Buggy just stabs him with a knife from like a floating hand. So Buggy's Devil Fruit is eventually broken down later on in the series. In the Impel Down arc, you actually find out the real ability that Buggy has. So you find this out during the fight with Buggy, but you don't really know anything about his Devil Fruit because the Devil Fruits weren't really explored that much back then. So basically, what Buggy's Devil Fruit does is it grants him the ability to split up his body as he wants into as many pieces as he wants, but he and those pieces can fly around to a certain distance. The thing that controls how his body moves is based on his feet. So Buggy's feet can't float. His feet have to stay on the ground. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. Well, I guess they don't have to stay on the ground, but basically Buggy can't move his feet around in the air. He has to keep walking with his feet, even if he's separated from them. And he can only float his body parts a certain distance away from his feet. So that's just the way it works. I don't know if it's clear if his floating hands could pick up his feet and then carry them. I don't think that was ever done at all. But basically, Buggy has a really, really overpowered Devil Fruit. And at the beginning of the series, Luffy is kind of outmatched by it a little bit. Because, like, there isn't really anything, like, that he can do to stop it. But the fight at the beginning of the series, I mean, first off, it's the beginning of the series. So Luffy is, like, really weak. And so the fight is really toned down. I feel like if Buggy used his abilities to the fullest of extent, then he would probably have won the fight. And he was kind of winning the fight, but Nami was trying to steal his gold at the same time. And so he kind of got distracted by her, and he couldn't focus on the fight and Nami's treasure at the same time. So that's my opinions on Buggy. Buggy's got some other people on his crew that show up with him. There's Richie and Moji. Richie is Moji's pet lion. Moji is an animal tamer, but he has a giant lion that he always is seen with. And then there's Kabaji, who is a unicyclist swordsman, and he fights Zoro in the first arc. Meanwhile, Luffy takes out Moji and Kabaji, or Moji and Richie, and Buggy later on. So all these characters kind of travel around with Buggy, and they're the comic relief characters of the series because they don't pop up very often, but they pop up enough to kind of show up every now and again. Like they're always just around. Like it's really funny because Buggy originally was from the Grand Line because I mean he traveled with the Pirate King's crew, so he knew all about that. But I mean he just wants treasure. Like that's the whole thing about him. So for a long time in the series, Buggy is seen doing his own thing, trying to find the lost treasure of Captain John or whatever his name is, and that's just what he's doing throughout the series. So Buggy gets his parts all tied up by Nami. Like Nami ties up his arms and legs, and then Luffy sends Buggy launching into the sunset with just his head attached to his arms and feet, or his hands and feet. So imagine just a head with 2 hands and 2 feet. That's all Buggy is, and he gets launched into the sunset. So eventually, Buggy lands on an island and is found by Alvida. And this happens like throughout all the other events that happen at the time, but Buggy's head gets found by Alvida, who at the time had eaten a devil fruit that made her skin really slippery. I think they called it the sube fruit. So basically, she's a smooth woman now. And one of the things that her devil fruit granted her was the ability to look really pretty. Like, I mean, I completely agree, Atticus. Like, Buggy is the purest pirate in the show. Buggy is the only pirate in the show who, like, really cares about plundering treasure. Like, Buggy doesn't want to be king of the pirates. He doesn't want to have a hard life of like living on the edge. He just wants to be rich. He just wants to have money. And so it's always really funny seeing Buggy in the story, because I mean, he's just, like I said, he's comic relief. You can't hate Buggy. Like, I mean, he like, the way he overreacts is just really funny too. So anyway, he meets Alvida. Eventually, with Alvida's help, he finds his old crew who's fighting over who gets to be captain. And so eventually they're like, oh my god, Buggy's still alive. And then Buggy's crew we were carrying around his parts. So like, he just became a full pirate again. So now he's full pirate, he has his crew back, and he has Alvida, and now they go on their way. Pirates are all about hanging out with your bros and drinking and eating feasts and solving other people's problems with no possible or expected personal gain involved. See, the thing about that is that Luffy's crew does do a lot of dirty stealing on the back end of a lot of those good deeds. I mean, there is a lot of eating and drinking and feasts, but there's never too much time to steal some treasure. So anyway, that's Buggy's story, and that's pretty much all that happens. Again, Buggy's character doesn't really develop much in the first saga of the series. He's pretty much just there to kind of advance the story a little bit and to provide a lot of backstory to the world that's connected to Luffy's. So Luffy knows Shanks, and Buggy knows Shanks, so there's that connection there. So, I mean, Buggy recognizes the straw hat Luffy is wearing and immediately hates it, because he's like, I know that hat. That's the hat that the person I hate the most in the world wore. And so that's just his reason to hate Luffy. So, aside from that, we'll continue on with Buggy next week. But for now, that's all there really is to say about Buggy. So, Zoro and Nami and Luffy all leave the town after driving out the clown pirates. And, I mean, the town hates Luffy because they think that he beat up the mayor. But meanwhile, the mayor is thanking Luffy from the bottom of his heart for saving the city. And then Nami's just like, and we made it away with Buggy's treasure. And Luffy's like, well, actually, I left it all back there. So, so Nami is mad at Luffy for leaving all of her gold behind. But, I mean, he doesn't really care because he has no use for it. And he wanted to help out the mayor because he's a good guy. And there's also a story about a dog that's there who, you know, Richie and Moji burned down his last treasure, his owner's pet shop. So, I don't know. It's very, very emotional and stuff like that. So, now we have a very straightforward arc. There isn't really anything in this arc that's of importance except introducing to another pirate type. So, in the first four story arcs of the series. The Buggy arc, the Kuro arc, the Baratie arc, and Arlong Park. There's four different kinds of pirates that are basically pave the way for the rest of the series up until a certain point. So the first kind of pirate is a pirate like Buggy. So you have pirates who just want to plunder and steal, and they want money, and that's it. So it's all about stealing and getting the gold. The second kind of pirate you have is Kuro, Captain Kuro. Now, when they originally land at the island, they're greeted by the Usopp pirates, who is a compulsive liar named Usopp, and his three young friends are all part of their own pirate crew. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about these characters because the characters really provide nothing for the series past this arc. Same with Kaya, the Usopp's best friend, as well as her butler, the goat dude. But basically, Usopp's story is that when he was young, his father left to become a pirate. And Usopp's father is one of the members of Shanks' crew. So Yasopp is his name, and he's like the greatest marksman in the world. And he's part of Shanks' crew, which is also one of the strongest pirate crews in the world. That's established from the get-go that Shanks' crew is very powerful. Shanks' inner circle of his crew are all very strong, even though we haven't actually seen any of them do anything, except for Shanks. So on the island, Usopp is basically lying to the people every day that there's pirates approaching. And this is like stemmed from being abandoned kind of as a child. You know, his father gone, and now it's like the pirates are going to be here every day kind of thing. So if the pirates are here, it means his dad's back, and that's great and all. So he's kind of got those issues going on. But Usopp kind of throws all of his emotions forward a little bit. He fakes his way into gaining an upper hand in a lot of situations. So, this really never changes throughout the entire series. Like, Usopp basically uses tricks and underhanded things to kind of get his edge on people in the series. So, when he first lands at the crew, Usopp's like, my crew has like hundreds of men, and Luffy's like, where are they? And he's like, they're all behind the bushes. We're gonna get you if you don't go away. And he's like, well, I'll fight you. So eventually, like, Usopp learns that they're good pirates, not bad pirates, because he's trying to protect his town as well. So the three dudes that hang out with Usopp are basically his crew, and they're basically yes men to him. Like, they really like that he lies to people and stuff like that, and they think it's really it's just fun, right? But Kaya's butler, her main butler, whose name is Kumadori. I think it's Kumadori. Is it? No, Klahadore. Klahadol. Yeah. I don't know where. Kumadori is later on in the series. Kalahador is like basically the butler. And eventually it's revealed that he's a pirate who has this grand scheme that's been going on for years. So eventually Usopp finds out that he's a pirate, and he goes to save Kaya from his evil plan. And I mean, he already hates Usopp. Like, everyone in the village hates Usopp because he always lies. So he has this reputation. But this trustworthy butler has been in her life for years. And so when Usopp starts saying he's a pirate who's going to kill you and steal your fortune because she's sick and she's rich, basically she loses all respect for him because how could he do this? He's so nice, kind of thing. And then she slaps him, he runs away, and then, like, he almost gets shot leaving the property. And basically now everyone thinks Usopp is a terrible person, his friends included. But I mean, he's just doing his best to protect the city from an oncoming pirate assault that's going to be happening the very next morning, and nobody knows that they're all going to die the next morning. So basically, he spent his entire life lying and tricking people, and now when he needs everyone to believe him, they don't believe him because obviously the boy who cried wolf is a thing, and like they just don't believe his story, especially with someone who's trustworthy. So eventually the Straw Hats all help out Usopp to defend the coastline. Luffy is kind of gone for a long time because he gets lost and Zoro gets lost too. And so Usopp and Nami are kind of defending against the pirate attack themselves. But then, I mean, eventually Zoro and Luffy find their way there. Except Luffy's asleep for a lot of it because he gets hypnotized by Django, who is Django is the first mate of the. Well, technically he's the captain now, but he wasn't the captain before. So Kuro's plan was to fake his own death, gain the trust of an entire city for 3 years, I think. For 3 years. And then all of a sudden have Kaya's will written in his name. So the Goku taking 30 episodes to get Namek part of the arc, yeah. I mean, it kind of was. Like, it's just how One Piece works. Like, characters always take a long time to get places in One Piece. So basically, Kuro used to be my favorite villain when I was younger, but not so much anymore because Kuro is an interesting pirate. So Buggy is the kind of pirate who is like, hey, I'm gonna plunder the gold, I'm gonna get all the gold, I'm gonna do this and that. But Kuro, basically, he was tired of running away. Kuro was a notorious pirate, famous for moving really fast, basically. He had this ability called Shakushi, which he uses to move really fast, like faster than the eye can see. And he does this little dance to start it up, and then he just kind of moves faster than he can control. So his attacks kind of hit allies and enemies because he can't really control how fast he's moving. So Kuro made a name for himself taking out entire fleets of ships using this ability, but he was tired of running away from the Marines because of the bounty on his head. So he decided to fake his own death so he could live a life peacefully. So his goal was to have a will of a rich family in his name so he could kill Kaya, because her parents were already dead, kill her, make it look like a suicide, and then basically claim the fortune and live the rest of his life in peace. So that's the second kind of pirate. The pirates who are just done with being a pirate. They just want to not be a pirate anymore. But Kuro eventually gets done in by Luffy, and Django gets done in by Usopp with the help of Zoro. And eventually, Kaya repays the debt to Luffy for saving the city because she eventually becomes part of the fight too. Because obviously she has to write the will, and she finds out the true intentions, apologizes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't trust you, even though you're my best friend, kind of thing. And then she repaid her debt by giving Luffy and the rest of them their own pirate ship, which is the Going Merry, and it's the pirate ship that they have for a very, very long time. It's the pirate ship they use for like the first 300 and something episodes. 310 episodes, I think. So, the Going Merry is definitely like an iconic pirate ship for the beginning of the series. So, I mean, Usopp doesn't really develop any character like ever. Like, I mean, he's always the same character he like was at the very beginning of the series. He does go through a little bit of a change during the middle part of the series, and I'll talk about that later when I get to it, when he dons the Sogeking outfit. But I mean, at the same time, like Usopp just is a really annoying character to listen to because he's weak and he's weak, but like he uses his imagination and trickery to get the edge on foes. So he's not strong, but he's very smart in that way. He has like a good battle sense, and he does that kind of every step of the way. In a bunch of epic ways. Thriller Bark is a good example of this, as well as as well as his fight with Chopper in Alabasta. Like it's just really funny the way both of them go down. So other than that, the Kuro arc didn't really have anything of note. Like Kuro is never heard from again. Like he becomes a pirate again. Like he's just like, well, my 3-year plan failed. I guess I'm gonna become a pirate again. And that's just the way he goes. Like nothing happens after that. Like he just stays a pirate. And that's pretty much it. They leave the island and great. It's just a character left in the dust. Again, the way Kuro moves and his weapon of choice was always my favorite as a kid. Kuro uses these long cat claws because, I mean, he's part of the Black Cat Pirates is the name of his crew. The Kuro Neko Pirates. So he has these furry gloves that have these really long sword-like blades that come out of each of the claws. And they're really cool weapons, but and it also like the way he adjusts his glasses with the palms of his hand, just it kind of like looked really cool to me. So I guess overall, the Kuro arc was really cool when I first started watching One Piece, but looking back, it's probably the least good arc of them all. Like that absolutely nothing of significance happens in the Kuro arc except that at the end of it um at the end of it they get their pirate ship. And like I said, you never hear from them again. So then we move on to the first bigger arc in the series, the Don Krieg arc. Now, the Don Krieg arc was about 10 episodes or 11 episodes, I think. But basically, and this is where we're introduced to Sanji, the fourth member of the Straw Hats. Sanji at the beginning of the series is, I mean, he's another character who never changes. Like, like Sanji he's a ladies' man. Like he always like flirts with girls wherever he goes, and he really butts head with Zoro a lot because, I mean, that's just the way the characters go. But he never really changes throughout the story. Like, he's always kind of the same character. Um, he has like a head about him, and like he doesn't like dealing with people's bullshit. And I mean, he says that straight up. But I mean, like he's he's just always like that. So it's really interesting seeing him bounce off of other characters, but alone he's pretty static. Um, in the 4Kids version, he was given like the worst voice actor possible, I think. He has like this really nasally New York accent, and I mean, and he has a lollipop in the version, but I mean, Sanji is always smoking a cigarette in like that's just what his character does. Like there's never a shot where he isn't either lighting a cigarette or already smoking one. It's just part of his character. So, of course they had to edit that a little bit. So, Sanji is a chef, and he comes from a floating restaurant called the Baratie. And the Baratie has a lot of really interesting characters, but basically the premise of the arc is that it's a restaurant full of fighting chefs. And Zeph, who is the head chef of his own pirate crew, and he was the captain of it, he lost his crew in a storm. Basically, Zeph and Sanji were the only two people who survived the storm that his pirate ship and Sanji's cruise ship, because he was a chef on the cruise ship. Um, Basically, they were the only two that survived, and they were stranded on a rock for years and years. And eventually, they were saved, and Sanji dedicated the rest of his life to Zeph's dream, which was to create a restaurant on the sea to help starving pirates. So Sanji has a very good heart in that if anyone, villain or ally comes to him who's hungry, he'll always feed them. And so I think that's a really admirable thing. It's kind of dumb, but at the same time, it's like don't kick someone when they're down kind of thing. So that's basically Sanji's character. Very kind-hearted. He's a chef and he just loves feeding people. Like it doesn't matter who they are, he just wants to feed them. So one day the restaurant gets visited by this pirate named Gin, who is he's just like this. They don't know he's a pirate at the time, but he's basically this guy who just like came to the Baratie. It's a pretty high class restaurant, but he's basically starving, and nobody in the restaurant will feed him, and they just want to kick him out. So Sanji sees this, and he feeds him, and he's like, "Oh, thank you for saving my life. I was dead. This is the most delicious thing I've ever eaten." So Gin leaves, and Luffy sees this act of kindness, and he's just like, "Hey, I want you to join my crew because I think we need a chef, and you're like perfect. You're so good." And Sanji's just like, "I'm never leaving this place." So Gin comes back with a giant pirate galleon that's completely destroyed, and everyone's like, what happened here?" And Gin comes down with his captain, Don Krieg, who is a notoriously evil pirate, and he's so starving because his entire crew has just been floating like with a broken ship for like so much time that basically no one has any energy left. So his crew is just like, "Why? Well, I mean, you're an evil pirate. If we feed you, you're gonna take over our ship." So they all, tell him to go to hell. But then Sanji and Zeph are just like, "All right, we'll feed your entire crew." And they're like, "Why would you do this?" So they feed him, and he immediately punches Sanji and is just like, "All right, so we're gonna, I'm gonna go feed the rest of my crew, and then we're taking your ship." Um, Basically, what happened to Don Krieg is, yeah, why are you like this? Basically, Don Krieg was going for the Grand Line. Like they they wanted to take over the Grand Line because Don Krieg wanted to be king of the pirates. And so they decided, okay, time to go to the Grand Line. So on their way to the Grand Line, they met a pirate named Hawkeye Mihawk, who basically destroyed their entire fleet. And they were forced to retreat, but they couldn't because their ship was like pretty broken. So they had nothing left, they were shattered, and they had to turn tail. So they came to Baratie because they heard that Zeph, who used to be a notorious pirate on the Grand Line, he has a journal that has all of the experiences of the Grand Line in it. So they want this journal, but Zeph is like, I have the journal, but I'm not going to give it to you. So basically, they decide that, okay, well, I'm going to go feed my crew, and then we're going to take your journal by force and the rest of your pirate ship. So before this happens, Luffy and crew run into some pirate bounty hunters while testing cannons on their ship, and they meet Johnny and Yosaku, who are basically these old friends of Zoro, and with them they take them to Baratie, but Luffy aims the cannon wrong, and he basically injures Zeph. And so Zeph is like, well, you did damage to me and you broke a hole in my wall, so you're going to have to pay for that to repair it. And so he's making Luffy work in this restaurant for an entire year. And so Zoro and Nami and Johnny and Yosaku are basically sitting there like, okay, well, what are we going to do for a year while you're working? So after this stuff happens with Krieg, it's like, okay, we're gonna fight to keep your thing alive. And thank you very much for the host, Cute Spide. I know you hosted me, but I'm talking about something you hate, so I doubt you'll be here very long. So basically, Gin steps out and reveals that he's actually the commander of the fleet. So he's not the captain, but he's like the second in command. He's basically the first mate. So he and Sanji have a pretty decent fight that kind of gets stalemated, and then Don Krieg is basically like the master of underhanded feats. So that's one thing I really enjoy about Don Krieg's character, is that he's very, very underhanded. He's kind of like he's kind of like a I will do anything to win kind of character. And that's the third kind of pirate that gets introduced in the series. Don Krieg is a pirate who wants power. Like, you hope your host worked? Yeah, it hosted. I saw it host. Yeah. Don Krieg with a K. I think that's how it's spelled. So anyway. So yeah, again, Spider, we're just talking about One Piece, so as the title would say. So I do too. It's my favorite, but you missed the recap up to this point. So anyway, I'm gonna keep going on. So basically, Don Krieg wants power. He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about, you know, this and that. He doesn't want retirement. He wants to be a powerful pirate. He wants to be king of the pirates, just like Luffy does. And so he wants to do any underhanded tactic to win. So when Gin can't kill Sanji, Don Krieg is like, you're worthless to me. And so he basically detonates this giant poison bomb in order to win the fight. But it's okay. It's okay, Spide. I'll be talking about this for a long time. I can't talk about Ep8, but so he launches this poison bomb, which Gin uses his gas mask to save Sanji, and basically gets toxic. He's full of this toxic poison, so he gets pulled aside. See you later, Spide. It was nice of you to join in, and I don't think I've been in your stream since you came back. So congratulations again on your Mausa-ing and Mausa on his spiding. um, so yeah. So Gin is out of the picture. He's been poisoned, and Luffy's like, okay. So basically, Don Krieg starts using all these really underhanded tactics in order to win his fight against Luffy. Luffy goes to punch Don Krieg because he wears this golden suit of armor that's like a golden alloy, so it's the hardest thing in the world. So he's basically fully protected. But he goes to punch him in the head, and he basically like pulls over this spiky cape. It's like a cape full of spikes, and Luffy just punches straight through it. Like, it's probably one of the first really epic moment in the series, as he just like gets punched. And the scene right before that is one of the worst scenes in the 4Kids dub, because Don Krieg throws all these bombs into the water to make like a screen of water appear. And while Luffy's running along a fallen mast, Don Krieg holds up his shield gun and starts shooting these darts, these poison darts at Luffy. Well, actually, I don't think they were poison darts, but they were darts. They were darts at Luffy. And the darts puncture his arms and legs, and after he punches Krieg, he just pulls them out. But in the 4Kids dub, the darts are replaced by suction cups. And in the scene, when he's shooting the darts into the water, you can clearly see that they are darts. But in the scene after, when Luffy's pulling them off his skin, the edit that they made to the darts is so terrible, because as Luffy's pulling them off his arm, you can hear the sound of the suction cup being like pulled off his body, but when he throws them on the ground, they still make the metal clank, like a metal thing, wood dropping onto wood. And it's just the most hilarious thing in the world. Like if there was one moment in the dub that I would say is probably the darkest moment of the 4Kids dub, it's definitely the poison suction cups. Like, hello, King Turtle. Sorry, I had to get that out of my system first. So basically, Luffy's already shown that he wants to go out of his way to save people and stuff like that, and, you know, right wrongs. But basically, Luffy gets, he basically one-shots Don Krieg, but before that, he gets caught in a metal net and falls into the ocean. And Sanji goes to save him. And after that, he still doesn't want to join the crew, but he's basically bullied by his coworkers into leaving. And they know it's out of love, and he knows it's out of love, and he thanks every one of them from the bottom of his heart. And it's a really touching scene when Sanji leaves the Baratie. But basically he becomes the 4th crew member. But backing up a little bit, there's a couple important things that happen. So first off, recapping Don Krieg, He's probably my favorite early villain in the first bit of the series. The next arc actually has the best villain in my opinion, but I'm not going to talk about that this week because I don't want to stretch my time limit here. So, Don Krieg is a power-hungry pirate. He wants to just dominate the Grand Line with a powerful army, but he wants to use underhanded and dirty tricks to kind of get his way. And he's a kind-hearted commander, but he's also fairly he kind of sides with Don Krieg a little bit, but not really. He's his loyal second in command, and there's a chance he could show up again because basically at the end of the arc, Gin had a heart-to-heart with Sanji where he said he would love to battle him again in the Grand Line. But, I mean, we're kind of past that point at this point, so who knows exactly what's going to happen. I doubt Don Krieg or Gin will ever show up again, but it's always worth a thought. Ooh, my OBS looks like I'm about to start dropping frames. Oh, I'm dropping frames. Not that you guys can see. So that's pretty much it. So, backing up a little bit, because there's a lot of really important things that happen in this arc. So, Johnny and Yosaku get the wool pulled over their eyes, and Nami steals the Going Merry and leaves. Like, while all this fighting is going on, she's just left. Like, after the fight with Don Krieg is gone, Luffy and Usopp are just like, "You mean the Going Merry's gone? Like, where did she go?" Like, basically, she hijacked the ship and left to go to Arlong Park, back to her home. And I'll be talking very in depth about Arlong Park next week. So tune in for that. But there's also one other very important thing that happened. So Zoro he uses a three-sword style, and before they land at Baratie, there's I'm not going to talk about the filler, or it's not filler actually. I'm not going to talk about the episode featuring the dude in the box, but Zoro's flashback is revealed, and this is so far the only thing we've ever seen of Zoro's past. I'm sure there's a little bit more to come because every character has had multiple flashbacks except for Usopp and Zoro at this point. But basically, when Zoro was young, he was a really cocky young child, and he wanted to be the best swordsman. So he joined this gym and sparred with the gym owner's daughter named Kuina all the time, and he wanted to win, but he never won. So eventually he wanted to just win with the most swords possible. So the first time he fought, he picked up 3 swords in his mouth, 3 in his left hand, 3 in his right hand, and then just kind of fought that way. And eventually Zoro switched to using only 2 swords, like 1 in each of his hands, but he always trained his neck during his training, so I think he always wanted to have a 3rd sword in there. But basically, he fought Kuina, and he challenged her 100 times and lost 100 times, and that's just all there was to it. So on their 100th battle, they challenged each other with real swords, and Kuina whipped out her special sword, known as the Wado Ichimonji. Basically, there's named swords in One Piece. I don't remember how many named swords there are. There's several tiers of named swords. So there's the supreme grade swords, which are like the highest tier of sword. And then there's the 2nd tier of sword, which are like great grade. And then there's a 3rd tier of sword, and then there's some under that, I think. Okay, there's the 12 Supreme Grade swords, and then there's the 21 Great Grade swords. There's the 50 Skillful Grade swords, and then there's just an undetermined number of grade swords. So all of these are the named blades that are shown in the show. And Kuina has one of the 21 great swords called the Wado Ichimonji, and she challenges Zoro with this sword, and she ends up winning the battle, of course, because she hasn't lost to Zoro ever. But then one day Zoro finds out that she died. It's actually shoutouts to Stairs. I mean, it's really weird the way that they handled Kuina's death in the 4Kids dub, because it's like normally they edit out like violence and stuff like that, but in the original Japanese version, Kuina lost her footing on some stairs and fell down and died. She just like hit her head and died. And in the 4Kids dub, the reason she died was because... No, I don't think she ever died in the 4Kids version. But a bunch of like the dojo people were like really upset that like she was, you know, specially trained or whatever because she was the dojo master's daughter. So they beat her up and she basically could never fight again. Or something like that. And I thought that was a really weird edit. Because it's like, I mean, in one case she dies, but in the other case, like, a bunch of people just beat her to the point where she can't do anything anymore. And it's like, okay, is that better? Like, no, it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it wasn't, I'm pretty sure it wasn't the stairs in the dub. I gotta look this up because I'm pretty sure... Okay, so I'm looking at this on the One Piece wiki. So Kuina in the story just died falling down the stairs, which you consider the character is appropriately depressing but realistic. So 4Kids can't have people dying because reasons, so they thought it'd be a better idea to come up with a story where she kicked some man's ass and later the guy's friend ganged up on her off screen. The implications of that are disturbing enough, but when it was done, they crippled her for life. So now Kuina lives permanently paralyzed and unable to fulfill her dream of being a swordsman. So that's, yeah, so that's basically what happens in the dub. Like she just gets beaten up by some dude and just gets paralyzed. So, I mean, they can't have death, but I mean, it's like, was it a better edit? Like, I mean, if she fell down the stairs and got paralyzed, is that better than being beaten up by some guy? Like, I just always thought that was really weird. Like I don't understand why they chose to do it that way. Anyway, so Kuina dies, and Zoro is obviously broken up about it. So Zoro vows to the dojo master that he will never ever lose with Kuina's sword because he wants to be the best swordsman in the world in her place. So Zoro's dream is to be the best swordsman in the world. And so the dojo master gives Zoro Kuina's sword. So Zoro has one of the 21 great named blades on him, and that's the main sword that he uses throughout the series. So during the Dawn Krieg arc, about the midway through the arc, all of a sudden Dawn Krieg's ship gets cut into thirds, and it's like who did that? So it's revealed that Hawkeye Mihawk, who is one of the uh, Shichibukai, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, which is the first time you ever hear of this. Um, he basically cut the ship in two, or into pieces with his sword. Now, Mihawk's sword is one of the 12 supreme grade swords, and it's only ever been it's one of the only 2 swords in the show that have been shown. So Mihawk's sword is one of them, and then the other sword that has been revealed from the great grades is was just recently uh, it was just recently shown in the manga, I think. Um, I'm pretty sure. So um, so Zoro sees this dude and he's just like, "That's Mihawk. That is the strongest swordsman in the world. If I beat that guy, I'm suddenly the strongest swordsman in the world." So so Zoro challenges Mihawk to a duel in the middle of this fight between Don Krieg and Luffy and what's going on. So everyone's like, "Well, okay, I guess we're gonna stop fighting to watch this." So Mihawk takes out this tiny little dagger and is like, "All right, well, I've been challenged to a lot of duels, so I'm just gonna challenge you with this tiny little plaything." And Zoro's like supremely insulted because he's just like, "I've been training all my life for this moment." So Zoro gets his ass handed to him and he gets stabbed. He gets stabbed next to the heart by this tiny dagger. And Mihawk's just like, "Well, aren't you gonna step back?" And Zoro's just like, "I don't step back." and and so he's just like, "Well, okay then. I guess that means you're actually taking this seriously." And so Mihawk steps back and puts away his little dagger, and he's just like, "All right, so I now respect that you actually wanted to challenge me to a duel. So, what's your name?" So he asks his name, and they do all that stuff. So basically, Mihawk's just like, "All right, since you've shown me the will that you want to actually defeat me this bad, I'll fight you with my sword, my real sword." So he pulls this gigantic black sword off his back, and no, that doesn't happen yet. Yeah, the dagger was the first thing. So Zoro does the strongest attack he has, which is the first time you see his one through 1,000 worlds, 3,000 worlds. I can't remember what it's called. Zoro uses this attack that is the strongest attack he has, and basically Mihawk is just like, "Okay," and he swings his sword and he breaks both of Zoro's swords. So Zoro always has a Kuina sword in his mouth, but then he just had 2 other swords that he just found along the way. So Mihawk just like shatters both of those swords, and like Zoro's like, "Welp, I guess that means I lost." So he stands up and just like basically holds his arms out, and Mihawk's like, "What are you doing?" And Zoro's like, "Well, you know, if you were to slice me in the back, what would that say about both of us?" And he's like, "Good point." So he basically just like cuts Zoro's body in half, like basically, and just like he falls into the ocean. So Zoro gets this gigantic scar along his torso for the rest of the series from that, and that's basically how that fight goes. So Mihawk yells at Zoro like if when he's still alive, and so Zoro just like raises his sword and he's like, "Hey, Luffy, if it's fine with you, I'm never going to lose another sword fight." And Mihawk's just like, "Well, then I will take you on later. Keep your promise to me by not losing, and then I'll fight you in the future when you're stronger." So Zoro's happy, and then Zoro and Johnny go off to go chase after Nami. So Luffy and Usopp goes with them too. Usopp, um, Usopp, Luffy, and Johnny, and they go to Arlong Park. So then the rest of the stuff happens. So Mihawk is one of the 7 warlords, and he's never really, like, you don't really know anything about his character. He's very stoic. Like, he doesn't say a lot. Like, he's basically just like bored, basically. He's just bored of like just being whatever. He lives on his own on this like abandoned island full of fighting monkeys, and like he just doesn't do anything other than just like walk around. Well, I mean, at the time, Luffy is just like, I mean, it wasn't okay. Zoro apologizing to Luffy like that was really awkward from what I remember, because Luffy was just standing there looking at him like, okay, I guess along with this. I mean, Luffy was pissed when that happened because he went to go fight Mihawk and Mihawk just got out of the way like, hello, what's wrong with you? And I don't know, Luffy was just like, he was all hyped up on the idea. He was just like, alright, never lose again. Yeah, you'll be the best. So, I mean, Luffy had his own thing to worry about with Don Krieg and the army. But I mean, like, that's what I said. Luffy is just happy-go-lucky. I mean, he can be serious, and he was serious a lot in the Usopp arc. And I mean, he knows when to be serious and knows when to, like, make the right choices. But for the most time, he's just like, yeah, let's get him in there. I mean, Luffy was so pissed at Mihawk when he first slashed him. He was like, dude, Luffy like screamed like Zoro's name, and like he went to go take out Mihawk, like, and then Mihawk just got out of the way and he got his head stuck in the side of the ship. So, I mean, Luffy is like very, yeah, he was pissed at Mihawk, yeah, not Zoro. So, I mean, yeah. So Mihawk, you never really see him again for a really long time after that because he's kind of on a power level higher than all the characters in the series. So anyway, Mihawk's just like, well, I was looking to kill time, and I'm sorry I messed up your ship, Don Krieg, but I'm not really sorry. So I'm just gonna go on my merry way, and then I'm just gonna go on my merry way and leave. So he just leaves, and then the rest of the fight continues. Um, so all in all, it was only one episode that the fight happened in for Mihawk, and then the rest of it was kind of focusing on Don Krieg and the rest of the fighting chefs. But eventually Sanji joined the crew and they went on their way to go find out why Nami stole the ship. So the last thing I'll talk about, I guess, and I didn't make a split for this because I was going to talk about this next week, but since I'm on the topic of Mihawk and the Baratie, I can kind of touch on this. Basically, Johnny explains to Sanji and Luffy on their way to Arlong Park what the 7 warlords are, and at this point, you know nothing about who any of the warlords are. The only thing you know is that Mihawk is one of them, and then Yosaku tells Sanji and Luffy that there's another warlord who's a fishman, and Arlong, who is the really dangerous guy that they're heading right towards, basically, used to be on the same crew as this warlord, so they're kind of on the same level, but not really. So Yosaku basically gives an overview of the warlords, and I can give a more like in-depth one because not much is revealed back then. Basically, what you learn then is that there's seven pirates who are basically, I don't actually remember all the details you get revealed at that early in the series, but I'll just say it now. So, above the level of pirate, there's the classification of warlord pirate, and these pirates are special pirates that have been given the title of warlord by the world government, who is basically the head of the Marines. And basically what it is to keep the pirates in check. So these pirates are given a special title, and their crews are excused of the deeds they have done, so they can go on doing their piratey things without being risked of getting caught by the Marines. However, they have a deal with the Marines that if they need them to do something, they will be on call to do it. And so it's basically like, we're going to give you this power to be able to kind of do what you want, but you need to scratch our back if we need it. And that does happen later on in the series, but for now, like, it's just the pirates. And every pirate who has the title of a warlord is kind of sleazy in some way, except for a couple. So it's like, basically it's just like this special title to flaunt around. But in the early part of the series, as far as we are right now, basically the pirates are, it's basically, they're the powerful pirates. They're the powerful evil guys. So the warlords are they're all basically bad guys. So you find out that Mihawk is a warlord, and you're like, oh, he's really strong. They're all probably that strong. And then you find out about this mysterious merman pirate who's also a warlord, who you never actually meet for like another 380 episodes or something like that. So so that's pretty much all I had to talk about One Piece this week. Overall, if I had to, I guess I'll give an overall summary of the Baratie arc because I didn't give it. Overall, Baratie is probably my favorite arc in the beginning of One Piece, aside of this of the talking. Arlong Park is probably my favorite arc out of the East Blue saga. East Blue is the name of the area of the ocean they're in, and I didn't actually explain the world geography of One Piece, but I can do that next time when I talk about the journey to the Grand Line. So, Baratie definitely had the most action. Again, not much character development. It was basically just like you learn this and that about the characters. You find out that Nami is a little bit deeper of a character than you thought, but she was pretending to be part of the Straw Hats to steal their treasure, so who knows exactly what's going on with that, but East Blue equals MMO starting area, West Blue equals the rest of the game. They never actually go to West Blue. The rest of the game is the Grand Line. I guess I could prep some visuals because the map of One Piece is incredibly complex to talk about in just words. Because it's basically 4 gigantic oceans separated by a ring of land, and then the ocean on one side of the ring in the middle of the world is called the Grand Line, and then on the other side of the ring it's called the New World, which is technically Grand Line Part 2. So I mean, it's pretty easy to talk about, but I mean, basically the world of One Piece is like, it's basically this gigantic ring of land that's just got islands dotted everywhere. It's very, very much ocean. I don't think anyone lives on the Red Line either. except for in Mary Joa, but um, we've only ever seen that once, so yeah. So anyway, that's it for One Piece this week. Uh, I keep wanting to read this thing up. I opened up the One Piece wiki talking about the Meito, the great name swords, and it kind of shows all the named swords. Um, I'm pretty sure the Shodai Kitetsu was just revealed recently. It's one of the swords in Wano, but I can't remember if that's actually the sword that the sword that there's also this other sword I've been thinking about here. Anyway, so next week, I'm going to be doing my show Friday as usual. Um, Friday is usually the day, but yesterday I had stuff going on, so it's not going to be Saturday. Next week, I don't know if the show's going to go on as long as this because I don't have I know exactly what I want to talk about, but it's not going to be quite as long as this one. There's paper fan from Tales of Symphonia. Yeah, that was a good weapon. Um, Next week, I'm going to be covering Arlong Park, Logetown, and the trip across Reverse Mountain on the Grand Line. I talked about 4 arcs today, from the beginning through Buggy, through Don Krieg, and through Kuro. So next week I'm only be covering Logetown and Arlong Park. But there's a lot of content to discuss in them, and especially in Logetown because it introduces a lot of new concepts and stories, and of course the return of Buggy. Yay! So, yeah, look forward to that. If you're watching on Twitch, which all of you guys are in my chat right now, if you want to rewatch any episodes, you can watch them on youtube.com/garagedooropener with a 0. That's garage, GARAGEDOOR, 0 PENER, because garage door opener with an O was taken when I made my account. Haha! If you're watching this episode from YouTube, you can tune into the shows live Fridays at 5 p.m. PST on twitch.tv/garagedooropener with an O. Same spelling, except just an O instead of a 0. Again, today's Saturday, not Friday, but it's just the way it worked out. If you'd like to hashtag continue the conversation, you can either ask me questions in Twitch chat at the beginning of the show or throughout the week to personally talk about on the GDO show, or I could just talk to you in chat if I'm working that day. Content for these shows is always appreciated because it gives me something extra to talk about. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can always email questions to the GDO show. That's thegdoshow@gmail.com. And that's pretty much all the sellouty stuff I have to talk about there. As the One Piece discussion goes on, I don't know if I may have other people on to talk about it too, because One Piece is very big and there's a lot of things that go on that happens later on in the series that's kind of in-depth, so we'll see what happens with that. But who knows? But other than that, we're done the show for this week, and I have one last One Piece song. I played some One Piece music before I started, and we're going to play some when I finish. So, again, I don't have an outro screen yet. One day I'll make one, or someone will make one for me, and I'll use it, but I have absolutely no idea. So tune in next week for talk about Arlong Park, Logetown, and Reverse Mountain Arc, and then a short talk about Crocus and Laboon before we start getting into the Baroque Saga after that. So, I'll see you guys all next week.